Hello again. I think the name of this talk will be called "You Might Be a Protestant If." And this talk is not directed toward my Protestant brothers and sisters, but instead it's directed towards my Catholic brothers and sisters who may think they're Catholic, but in actuality may actually be Protestant. And what I mean by that is, by the simple definition of a Protestant, that particular word deriving from the word protest, in particular being in protest to the Catholic Church. One of the main precepts of our faith is that we submit to an authority on earth greater than ourselves. That authority being put in place by Christ Himself when He instituted Peter as the rock, the church on which He would build His church, the one that He promised would prevail, and the gates of hell, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And then He came back and He prayed that Peter would not fail, and that is where we get the belief or the teaching that the Pope is infallible in matters of faith and morals, interpretation of the Bible, in cooperation with the rest of the magisterium in the Holy See, which is in the Church of Rome. So, Catholics, to be Catholic, you have to, that's one of the main things you have to do. The first steps is say that I submit to this authority, because either everything rests on the Church being right in all its infallible decisions, or it falls on not accepting any of those, because you can't say, well, they're right on part of it, but not on the rest of it. They're either infallibly and divinely inspired on all of it, or on none of it. So, here's a few questions for fellow Catholics, and this is not to slight Protestants, because not all Protestants believe these things I'm going to run through, but certainly there are different Protestant sects that do believe one or more of any of these, and whether they did or not is really beside the point. The fact that you're a Catholic in protest to any of these things would, by definition, classify you as a Protestant, one in protest to the Church. And so, if you're against homosexuality, you might be a Protestant, because the Church teaches that that is a grave moral disorder. It's not only the Church, but God has also built His moral law into nature itself. For those that say that, well, it's just something natural and it's okay because of that, nature itself says that's not so. And an example of that is that when people act outside of God's moral code, when they're promiscuous, whether they're homosexual or not, things erupt such as STDs, AIDS, those kind of things that will basically eradicate those activities by themselves. So nature itself screams of a divine creator, and the moral code in nature reflects that of the Church as well. So homosexuality is wrong. It's not that we don't love the sinner. We love the sinner. We hate the sin. Homosexuality is no different than adultery as far as the sin. They're both mortal sins. They'll both bring hell to anybody that dies with those particular sins on the stain of those sins on their soul. So the only reason that homosexuality may get more press these days as far as something that the Church is in opposition to is because it's in the direct opposition to the attack or the affront that the homosexual activists are bringing against the Church these days, and also trying to push it down our throats that it's normalcy and it's something that we should all accept. Same goes with gay marriage. If you believe that's okay, you might be a Protestant. The Church teaches that marriage is the union between one man and one woman. Anything else is an abomination in God's eyes. Nothing against people that struggle with homosexuality. but that is a cross that they're meant to carry, and it is a choice to live that lifestyle, not a choice to have that disorder necessarily, but to act on that disorder is a choice, just as for a heterosexual person to choose adultery is also a free choice, and to do so is also a disorder that's not something that was originally intended or ordained by God. A monogamous relationship is God's intention, and so those practicing adultery will also fall prey to the moral code built into nature as well. If you believe in euthanasia, then you might be a Protestant. The church teaches under no circumstance are we to be pulling the plug on people because we think that had they been conscious, they would not want to suffer in this fashion. Catholics believe in the protection of life from conception until natural death. If you believe in abortion for any reason, rape, incest, etc., woman's health, if the woman could die giving birth, the church teaches that there's no exception for abortion. The mother's life is no more important than the baby's. And because life starts at conception, that's scientifically proven as well. When sperm meets an egg, that is when a human life begins. And if nothing else interferes with that, it will be born a full, intact human being. So that is not to be interfered with. I know that the rape and incest thing is a big thing for a lot of people, but it basically boils down to two wrongs don't make a right. And the baby did not have a choice in the matter, and therefore it cannot be murdered because of someone else's evil act. And God's good will always triumph over any evil act. And for a Christian, they would have faith in that and know that a woman, by making the right decision after that and going ahead and having that baby, yes, that is going to be a traumatic experience for that woman. But it's been very proven that an abortion in and of itself is far more traumatic on a woman. There's many testimonies and witnesses to that in the world, and not only mentally but physically on their body, which could render them sterile, they could have cervical cancer, greater risk for breast cancer, etc. in the future. So anything else is a lie and a deception for those that want to promote the pro-abortion agenda. If you don't believe that the Eucharist is truly the body and blood of Christ, you might be a Protestant. The church takes very literally Christ's words to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And then if you don't, you shall not have life within you. He repeats that several times. If you do not accept that fully, you do not have to understand it fully. There's no way we can completely wrap our minds around that as human beings. But you have to have that, take that act of faith and believe it. And if you don't believe it fully, you shouldn't be receiving Holy Communion. So you might be a Protestant if you don't accept that teaching, that truth. If you believe there should be women priests, then you might be a Protestant. The Catholic Church has ruled infallibly and definitively that there will never be women priests. And that's not just because of cultural norms of the day when Christ founded his church and things like that. Women cannot be priests because of deep theological reasons. And theology is how God reveals himself to us through the world. And there's a great body of work called The Theology of the Body, which was 129 different public addresses given by Pope John Paul II. If you'd like to study deeper the reasoning behind why women cannot be permitted as priests, I would recommend studying a book called Theology of the Body for Beginners by probably the greatest scholar on the subject, whose name is Christopher West. Be a good place to start. But it's not because we're trying to hold women down. We don't consider that to be a higher, men to be in a higher position than women in the Catholic Church. Quite the contrary. We try to serve our women and actually be subservient to our women as Christ was to his church, to his disciples, apostles. He washed their feet. He suffered and died for us. that's the example we were given to lead for our women. So it's certainly not something to hold women down. That's a perversion that modern day activists have put on it. And that's about it. There's several other things that you could question yourself about if you don't believe that could cause you to actually be a Protestant. So I would challenge the Catholics out there to study their faith more intensely, pray the Holy Spirit guide you in the truth, and become more fully Catholic. And God bless you, and peace be with you.